Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Very much appreciated. It's always good to see new faces, and it's always good to see, I don't want to say old faces, but let's say existing faces. So I'm going to do a mindset training today. Now, it's not a very long mindset training, but hopefully you're going to find it useful. Maybe it will help you focus. Maybe it'll help you move forward. I don't know, but some way, somehow, perhaps you'll find it useful. So let's begin. So I like to start with a couple of parables. So this is called the blame mirror, the parable of the blame mirror. A young Russian man called Kavi was walking past an antique shop, and in the window he saw a magic mirror advertised, and inside the shopkeeper explained that the mirror could show the source of all your misfortunes. Can we move that? Having experienced much misfortune in his life, Kavi bought the magic mirror, believing he would discover who had been responsible for all of his unhappiness. And immediately on arriving home, he unwrapped the mirror, hung it on the wall, eager to discover those who had caused so much misery in his life. And he saw the faces of others, his father, his boss, his friends. Angered at how those so close to him could have been so cruel, he cursed them and distanced himself from everyone. Years passed, and Kavi lived alone, bitter and broke, a lonely hermit. One day a traveler knocked on his door and asked to see the mirror, and Kavi explained how the mirror worked and what he had shown. And the traveler looked in the mirror and said, "Strange, I only can see you in it." Kavi snatched the mirror from him and looked again, and he looked deeply into the mirror this time. For the first time, for the only time, he saw himself. You see, blame blinds us to our part in the story. Until we own our reflection, nothing changes. This is the parable of the farmer's fence. A farmer built a fence to keep out wild animals and to stop them trampling his crops. But every morning his crops were still trampled, and he blamed the animals, the wind, even he blamed the neighbors. One day he stayed up all night to catch the culprit. To his surprise, he discovered his own dog slipping under a loose plank to play in the field. And the farmer realized that fixing the fence was never enough. He had to first look at what he was responsible for. Before blaming the world, inspect your own gate. The parable of the three brothers and the broken bridge. Three brothers tried to cross an old bridge. The bridge, being old, collapsed under them, and they fell into the river. They all climbed out onto the riverbank from where they started. And the first brother blamed the bridge and refused to trust the path again and returned home. The second blamed the villagers who built it and became angry with everyone he met and also returned home. The third brother blamed no one. He learned to swim, and it was only the third brother that reached the far side of the river and arrived at his destination. Blame builds walls. Responsibility builds strength. So, this is part 2 of The Devil Within. Whose fault is it anyway? Some of you will have seen the first one. And I will come back to that one perhaps at a later stage. But if you haven't already guessed, this mindset training is all about blame and responsibility. Can we take responsibility for our own actions, or should we be blaming other people? So this is to help you go from blame to responsibility. Instead of looking outwards, take responsibility for your own life. Take responsibility for where you are right here, right now. The power of owning your life and letting go of excuses, and understanding that the power of accountability and the power of owning your life, letting go of excuses, and understanding the power of accountability. Because blame or responsibility. The choice is that change. This is the choice that changes everything, because you always have a choice. You can blame somebody else, or you can take responsibility for the circumstances that you're in right here, right now. Because if you blame somebody else, and if you lay all of that on somebody else's shoulders, what control do you really have? Whereas if you take responsibility, that story begins to change. You see, if you start the journey towards ownership, growth, and personal power, you can lay the past to rest and move on. As long as you hold on to the ire of blaming somebody else and believe that it is somebody else's fault, then you will carry that grudge with you, and it will hold you stuck where you are. You can give yourself permission to forgive and forget. Now, I like this image. This is a painting that my daughter drew when she was about 9-10 years old. And it says, "Don't look back. You're not going that way." And I thought it was a really beautiful picture. And I have that on my bedroom wall, on my shelf, actually. Because for her whole life, I've done as much as I can to impress a positive mental attitude, to try and help her with her self-esteem, to make sure that she grows up into a strong, independent woman. But at some point, your influence on those around you, those close to you, becomes greatly reduced as they take more and more control of their own life. And at that point, once they take control of their life, just as we did when we became adults and started being able to make choices for ourselves, who can we really blame for anything in our life? Wherever you are right here, right now, it is as a result of choices that you made. So, playing the blame game, it feels good on a temporary basis. It's their fault. It wasn't me, it was their fault. It can shift the focus outwards instead of looking inwards at what you could have done differently or what you could have done better. It's easy to blame the other person. It's easy to say it's their fault that I'm in this situation. It's their fault that I'm stuck. But blame is what we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort and guilt. And it delays and even stops growth. You always have a choice. You have a choice on how you react on the situation. You have a choice on the actions that you take in any particular circumstances. You have a choice on whether you take control of that situation and blame somebody else, or on whether you take responsibility for it, for that situation, for that outcome, for that result, for that circumstance. Because when you take control, you can now make changes. You see, why do we blame? Fear of failure? Because if it's our fault, we failed in some way. Protecting the ego. Maybe we're too proud to admit that it was our fault. We're too proud to accept that we made a mistake. We didn't know perhaps as much as we thought we knew about whatever that situation is. It's learned behavior. Perhaps that's what happened in your family as a child. Perhaps that was a thing in your friendship circle. Perhaps you learned it from one of your early jobs, a career. Maybe you learned it from somewhere in your friendship circle. Maybe this was a habit that other people have taught you, to blame somebody else for your circumstances. Blame somebody else that you don't have enough money. Blame somebody else for the fact that you don't have what you want in life. Social reinforcement. This is called social reinforcement. where everybody around you executes the same behaviors. They just blame everybody else. I mean, we see this kind of stuff at work all the time, in jobs. When somebody doesn't do, I know when they were asked to do a particular task and they don't do it, and the boss asks, why didn't that task get done? Well, I asked X and I asked such and such a person to remind me. I wasn't in that day. I didn't know about it. It was that person's fault. It was this, but it was because my car broke down. My dog ate my homework. When you are surrounded by people who have these kinds of attitudes, these kinds of mindsets, it will invariably rub off on you. So when you see everybody else enacting these kind of behaviors, it feels normal to copy that behavior. So what is the cost of blame? Stagnation stops progress. Are you stuck right now? Where are you? Is your life where you want it to be? When you were in your teens and your early 20s, all the dreams and visions that you had of where you want to be in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s, are you where you want to be now? Did that vision play out for you? If it didn't, I don't know why. Maybe it's because the circumstances in your life you blamed on somebody else. I don't know. But this can be the cost of blame. It can keep you stuck where you are, and it can stop you making progress. It can harm your relationships. Imagine being in a relationship with somebody who never admits they're at fault, who never admits that they did something wrong, who never wants to take the blame, who never wants to take responsibility. Imagine what that relationship would be like. For you, always having to go, okay, fair enough, it was my fault. Okay, no problem, I'll fix it. Like being your very own customer service agent. It leads to a loss of control, can lead to lies. Because when you believe, when you know deep inside that you made a mistake, but you don't want to own up to it, you start to lie and blame other people, blame other circumstances. You start to make things up to try and shift the blame away from yourself. This, of course, if this becomes a lifelong habit, can become a mental and emotional drain. Imagine feeling that guilt of really deep inside knowing that you should have taken responsibility for X, Y, Z. Maybe you have a whole list of X, Y, Zs. Imagine knowing that you should have taken responsibility for that, but you managed to shift the blame on somebody else. Maybe you can sleep well at night doing that. But I'm sure that there will always be some kind of a mental and emotional effect that will prevent you from moving forwards. And let's face it, who can really hide it when they're avoiding responsibility? Other people around you can see it. Maybe at work, this would prevent you from getting promoted. Maybe this would prevent you from being part of a friendship circle at work. You see, blame hands the power to someone else. It takes the power directly out of your hands and hands it to other people. So taking responsibility equals power. Responsibility isn't guilt, it's ownership. It means that I can choose how I respond. Because once you take responsibility, you now have the power to look at that circumstance with an open mind without having to hide anything. You can bring others into the situation and say to them, what could I have done differently? Get feedback, get advice. What could you have done differently? How could you have done things differently? What can I do that will prevent this happening next time? When you take responsibility, it leads to action, to clarity, and to change. And action is always going to be king. Now, I know I've used this phrase many times as an affiliate marketing presentation, but this is something for life. If you want things in your life, you have to take action that will bring those things into your life. If you're single and you want a partner, it's not going to happen by sitting indoors on your own every day. You have to take action. Now, that might be going on a dating site. Maybe it's going down to a local bar. Maybe it's going to a singles club. I don't know. Whatever it is that suits you. But you'll have to take action. If you want to learn to drive, it's not going to happen sitting at home. It's not going to happen sitting in a car that's parked on a driveway. It's going to happen by getting out there, having lessons and learning. Action is always going to be king. So there is a shift that needs to happen. Blame says it's their fault, but responsibility says, what can I learn? Blame says, I can't control this. Responsibility says, I will own my part of this. It is only when you take responsibility for your life that you discover how powerful you can truly be. So what tools do we have to help us take responsibility? Well, we all have the ability to pause rather than reacting immediately when somebody blames you for something. Maybe it was your fault. Maybe I did do something wrong. Maybe I didn't do it on time. Pause. Think about the situation. Think about the circumstances. Think about the events leading up to that situation or circumstance. What could have been done differently? And what was your part in it? What could you have done differently? Did you play a part in it? Reframe that circumstance and set them back as lessons. Reframe setbacks as lessons. They are all things that you can use to learn from. These are all obstacles that come into our life on a day-to-day basis that we have no control over. And we can choose how we deal with these obstacles. We can use them as lessons. We can use them as motivation. Or we can use them as an excuse. Be radically honest with yourself. There's no harm. Nobody's perfect. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. It's about recognizing the mistake, recognizing whatever it is, recognizing your part of it, taking responsibility for it, and learning so that you can move forward, so that you can be better tomorrow than you were today, and so that you can help others to avoid the same mistakes. After all, isn't that what we're here for in this industry? We're here to help others. And the best way that we can help others is by learning as much as we can about what we are doing, the industry that we're in. And when something isn't going exactly as we plan, we take responsibility for it, we learn from it, we move on, and we teach others so that they can have a better tomorrow. You can own your future. Responsibility is not a burden. It is the beginning of freedom, because when you take responsibility, suddenly you can choose the direction. You can own it. You can lead with responsibility, and you can grow because you made the choice to take responsibility. Happiness and respect will just come with it. No one can criticize or blame you if you have taken ownership. I had a circumstance many, many years ago when I worked in a hotel and I was the assistant manager, and myself and the manager didn't get on very well. She didn't like me very much. And I came into work one day and she started telling me off for something that I'd done or hadn't done. I don't exactly remember, but it was probably something that I hadn't done. Now, I could have in that moment argued back with her. I could have blamed her. I could have tried to lay the responsibility at her feet and try and get myself out of that situation. But I didn't. What I did is I immediately said, "You're right. I'm sorry, it won't happen again." What else could she say after that? She stuttered and stumbled with her words because she was fully expecting me to argue back. She was fully expecting me to deny that I'd made a mistake. And when I didn't, and when I took ownership and said, "I'm sorry, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, I forgot that," whatever it was, but it won't happen again. There was the conversation ended at that point. There was really nothing else that she could say. And all she ended with in the end was, "Okay, we'll make sure it doesn't happen again." I avoided the conflict. I avoided the stress because I knew I made the mistake. Obviously, I didn't know before she pointed it out, but in that moment, I knew I was in the wrong. Why would I argue? The only thing in that entire circumstance that, in my opinion, should have been done differently is the way the manager talked to me about it, because she didn't talk to me about it. She immediately launched into a berating for me, fully expecting me to argue back. So by taking responsibility, you take control of the narrative. Now it's the time to choose. The moment you accept responsibility for everything in your life is the moment that you gain power to change everything in your life. Your challenge now is to reflect on situations that you've blamed someone for. Rewrite the story and put yourself in the driver's seat. Take one action towards change. And ownership of action can bring clarity, and it will empower positive change. So to close on final thoughts. Okay, I don't have a final page. It seems like I didn't finish the final page, but that's okay. My final thoughts are, we all have the opportunity now to take control of tomorrow. Whatever happened in the past, whatever circumstances you've been in, whatever disappointments we've had, they're gone. You cannot carry that luggage around with you. You simply have to move on. Now we have an opportunity now to take responsibility for tomorrow, the day after. But much more importantly, we have the opportunity to help others to take responsibility for their future. And through helping others, we will all achieve the vision that we perhaps once had of our life when we were in our early years. The PowerPoint was having a tea break. So final thoughts. Responsibility is not a burden. It is a beginning of freedom. Own it, lead with it, and grow because of it.